Hey, hi everyone, welcome to the new video, and in this video we are going to take a look on Client Go library, which is used for creating cloud native applications on Kubernetes. So I have already created a Kubernetes cluster, and if I just do kubectl get nodes, we should see that Kubernetes cluster. And by the way, this is a local kind cluster that is running on my Docker container. So you can just download the kind binary and you can also create a Kubernetes cluster locally. So now I have opened this Kubernetes development repository on my IDE, and here I am going to create a new folder and I will name it as K8 Client Go, and inside this directory I am going to create one more folder and I will call it as K8 Client. Now inside this we will be going to create an application using Client Go library, and using that library we are going to look some operations like listing all the pods and getting a specific detail about a pod or checking all the namespaces that you usually do with the kubectl binary. So inside this K8 client folder I am going to create a go mod file, and let me just add it to Git repository. So now we have our Golang project set up, and now we can create a main.go file, and from there we are just going to uh, install the client Go library, and then we will look on the various functionalities of it. So I will create a file with name main.go, and we have that file ready here. Let me change the package to main, and inside this go mod file let's add the client Go dependencies. So let me just add them here. So I'm going to add two dependencies here. First one is the client Go, and the second one is the API machinery from k8.io. So we'll see these libraries in action. So now let me just create a main function here. So first thing what we have to do here is to get the kubeconfig to connect to the Kubernetes cluster. So for that, and first thing we will just simply create a variable with name kubeconfig, and there we will be just keeping a reference of our kubeconfig file. So generally the kubeconfig file is stored in your home directory under the .kube directory folder, and from there you should we have to retrieve that kubeconfig file. So let me just create a variable here, and this is going to be type string. Okay, now let's try to get that variable, or let's try to get the path of that kubeconfig from our home directory. So let me just do home directory. Let me just get the home directory, and I will call it as home. And from this home directory we can basically retrieve that file, that kubeconfig file. So what we can do is we can just simply do the flag dot string, and basically we will just read that string value, flag dot string, and here you have to give the flag name. So if you are running this without let's say you want to pass the flags when you are running the binary, your Go program, at the time also you can specify the flags. So I'm going to give the name as kubeconfig, and then here we can basically put the file location where our kubeconfig is present. So like I told you that kubeconfig is present at your home directory inside a .q folder. So let's try to get that file from there. So we have to do basically a file dot join here, file path dot join, because we are just going to pass the array to that file dot join method, and basically it will return as a absolute path of that file. So let's do home. So from home we have to get that thing here, and after that it should be dot cube, and then the file name should be config. Okay, now we have to give a third parameter, and basically the third parameter is just a string or a usage or a helper text. So I can just give a absolute path of kubeconfig, just a reference. So this looks fine to me, and I can just assign this to kubeconfig. So far this is good. So now what we can do as a next step, we have to basically create a config, and then we can pass that config to the Kubernetes client. So let's just parse these flag as well. So I have to do flag.parse here, and then I can basically create a config from this. So I can do config, and then I will have error as well, and then I can do client cmd dot build config from flag. If I do build config for from here, so here you have to either you can provide the master URL or you can provide the kube config path. So I'm going to give the master URL as the empty string, and then I can give the kube config here, and here it should be pointer. Yeah, let's check the error here. If we have error, then basically we can just simply panic error dot error. Okay, so now we have the config, and now we can create a client set out of this config, and then we can use that client set to interact with the Kubernetes cluster. So let me create a client set here, and I will have error as well, and I will get the client set from Kubernetes. So I will do Kubernetes dot new for config. I think I have to import this first. So that is gate.io slash client go slash Kubernetes. Kubernetes dot new for config, and here I can just simply pass my config. So this is also good. Now we can just simply check the error if we have any error. If we have error, then we can just simply panic out. And now let's use this client set to interact with the Kubernetes cluster. So let's try first to list all the pods that are currently present in all the namespaces. So let's do that. So I will do client set dot core v1 dot pods, and here you can pass the namespace, but let's say if you want to list all the pods from all the namespaces, then you can give empty string here, and then here you can just do a bunch of options like list, get, apply, and create as well. So I can just simply do list now, and then I have to pass the context. So I can do context dot background, and then I have to give the listing options. So I can just simply do v1 dot list options. Yeah, so this should return us pod list. Here you can see the return type is pod list in error. So let's try to get the, so let me call it as list, and the second thing it returns is an error. So let's check if we have error. If error is not equal to nil, then basically simply we are going to panic out. And if we have the list, then basically we can run a loop over that list, and then we can print all the pod names. So before that, let's try to check the total number of pods that we have. So I can do fmt.println, and I can just simply do length of list.items, because list.items contain all the pods. Let me put a string here as well, something like total number of pods we have. So let's say total pods. So this looks fine. Now let's try to run this and see if this is working or not. So I will open my terminal here. I will move to a directory, and here I can just do simply first I have to go get the dependencies as well, because we just create the go mod file but we don't have the dependencies. So I will just use go mod tidy, and now I can just simply use go run main.go. So this is simply going to build the binary, and then it will run it as well. So it returned us, we have total 9 pods, and I think okay, now this is fine. I can simply remove this as well. Yeah, so total number of pods that we have, they are 9. So now let's try to iterate over all these 9 pods and print out their namespaces as well as their name. So we can just simply run a loop over this list.items. Let's run a loop on item list.items, and let me call it as pod. This I can skip, and here I can just simply print the name of it. So let me do fmt dot So this will just print the pod name and the namespace over which this pod is created. Let's try to run this. Yeah, so here we can see it returned the 9 pod and it printed the pod names as well as the namespaces. So let me just do kubectl get pods just to show you that we are getting the same response that we have using the kubectl command line. So if we do get pods and if I do in all the namespaces, we should see that we have 9 pods and these are their names and this is a namespace. Okay, so now let's try to do one more thing. Let's try to get the detail of a particular pod. So for that, let's try to get all the pods and let's see which for which pod we want to extract all the details. So let's do one thing. Let's try to get the details of this API server. So let's write the code for that. So again, we have to use the client set dot core v1 dot pod, and here you can pass the namespace. So the namespace for this particular pod is cube system, and then here I have to get the get. I can give the context as context dot background. Then I have to give the name of that particular pod. So name I can easily get from here. From here I can just copy paste the name, and after that I have to provide the listing options. So I can do v1 dot get options. So I think this is fine. Let's see what this returns. So this returns pod and error. So let's try to get that pod. So I can do pod and error, and let's check for error if we have any error. If we have error, then just simply panic, and if not, then we can simply print this entire pod data. So let's print it, and let's do pod. Let's print the pod here. Let's run this. Yeah, so you can see we got a bunch of details, and this is a lot of detail. We are not able to clearly understand what this detail contains, but if you take a look if you try to understand this, so this is the cube system namespace, then we have the ID of that resource, and then we have the time as well over which this was created. So we have all the details associated with this pod. Let's try to get the labels of this pod. So here you can see we got the label, and this is basically a map, and here you can see the key name is component and the values cube API server. Second entry has the name tier and the values is control plane. Yeah, so this is what I wanted to show you, like how you can use the client code library to interact with the Kubernetes cluster. So we saw that how we can list all the pods, then we tried to retrieve the detail of any specific pod, and similarly you can create the pods here and you can delete the pods as well, and you can do all the update operations and delete all operations. You can delete the namespace as well. So you can do pretty much everything that you can do with the kubectl command line. So this was pretty much it for this video. Hope you like this video, and if you did like this video, then please give a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next one.